Hey guys, how's it going? I thought I'd just do a video on what's going on in the right wing around the world, I suppose. And yeah, so there's a bit of a division between what's become labelled as skeptics and the alt-right. So the alt-right have no problem playing identity politics against the left because the left is pure identity politics. There isn't anything liberal in the left anymore. So they're saying, well, if they play identity politics, why can't we do that? And this is blokes like Richard Spencer, whose big goal is to make America a white ethno-state. And then on the skeptic side, the big one would be like with YouTube, what people are calling the YouTube blood sports, and it would be people like Kraut T, who made videos trying to debunk race realism, and then a bunch of guys on the alt-right YouTubers very quickly shut him down, and I think he's gone off the scene. And more recently, Sargon of Akkad, I'm sure people have seen his videos. I'm sure even just general people have seen his videos on Facebook and what have you. But yeah, so he's also sort of gone in what they call a skeptical route, because he wants to, he's getting a new movement going, and he's called them the liberalists, which is supposed to, I suppose, differentiate them from liberals. And they're meant to be about treating everybody as individuals, and don't have group rights like people want to have. Identity politics is basically about group rights. It's not about individual rights. So they obviously see the way forward on the right is to make everyone more individual, and I suppose they're worried about collectivism on the right. I suppose there's a bit of, I don't really reckon I fit into any one of these groups. I sort of identify with bits of each of them, and then I don't identify with bits in each of them. I suppose the big reason for that is that I'm a Zimbabwean immigrant. So, I'm not scared of being labelled a racist. I mean, that's just the default position half of Westerners will take to you. If they hear your accent, they go, half of them are pretty interested, and the other half just go, well, you're a self-proclaimed racist already. I can prejudge that straight away. And of course it's like, well, what do you mean by racist then? So I'm pretty comfortable with all that shit, just because that's just been my life. But I come from a place where there was no real individualism, you could say, and I suppose I'm of the perspective that it's better to force people to be free than to force, because it's easier, whereas trying to force people to fucking rally them around some group, it's probably a lot harder to do. So I like that whole individual thing, but they do fuck it up, these skeptics, because they don't seem to realize that two individuals can act together. They seem to think if people are acting together, it must be by force, which is bullshit, right? So I'm sort of with them on that, but you just got to say, come on, blacks, sort that out. And then on the alt-right, I just, knowing what people are like, I don't know that's a platform that's going to get there. But what happens. If somebody runs on an alt-right platform and gets nominated and then goes on to become the leader or whatever, that's the way it goes. And I don't believe in doing never Trump shit and all that rhino stuff where, you just suddenly go, oh, well, I'm not going to vote for Trump even though I'm a Republican. It's like you've got to concede when you've lost. And yeah, so I'll concede to whoever the best leader is out there. That's just the way life works. So like I'm just going to start at the beginning, and then we'll talk about the two groups a bit more at the end. But Thomas Jefferson, rightful liberty is unobstructed action according to our will, within the limits drawn around us by the equal rights of others. So you can act however you want, so long as you're not taking away another person's right. So it means you can do a huge amount. And then there's just, a little bit you got to watch out for. Don't steal somebody's property. Don't murder them. Don't censor them. Let them speak. And you do whatever you want as far as you can, right? That's the green line. And overstepping it is that little red line there. And that's the same when somebody oversteps on your rights. You still have that responsibility to defend yourself and say, well, I'm actually going to charge you with a crime and report you to the cops, and we'll see, we'll have justice done. So, yeah, I'm a liberal. But then you get people who claim to be liberal, and they just have a whole bunch of reasons why you should now abandon this, because there's some precious little minority, self-identifying bloody. They're animals. They're not people. They're actually animals, and they're just born in. It's like, now I've got to respect that and let them take my rights away. To show them, it's like, no, that's not going on. Right. So then, libertarians are just more. Yeah, they like really don't like. What could you say? They don't like anything that can be perceived as aggression, unjust aggression. So here are a couple of quotes. In short, no violence may be employed against a non-aggressor. Right, so they don't even like tax because you haven't, consented to the tax. Right, so and if you don't pay your taxes, you get put in jail, and that's violence. And so they really want to build a state up from a standpoint of no violence being used except by people who initiate its use, right? Ayn Rand. In a civilized society, force may be used only in retaliation and only against those who initiate its use. So, I think these are valid perspectives. And I don't know if I ever identified as a libertarian, but there's a time when I identified with a lot of their ideas. But then you sort of go past that, conservatism. Because, liberalism, libertarian, it's easy to understand. It's easy to live with. It's easy to work with as a person. And then, you look around and it's, nobody's murdering people and getting away with it. Nobody's stealing, well, at least not in the West, nobody's stealing property and getting away with it. People are free. Now, a lot of people are free and unhappy, and that's because of their own personal choices. But I don't want to associate with depressed free people. So you get busy with people who are free and think a bit like you, and you want to do things together. So I know that as an individual, I'm an individual, I can do what I want. But I want to work with other people. And I don't want to be in a situation where I'm being acted upon. I've been, like a good example of this is Canada basically passed a law where they could punish you for not using certain pronouns when talking to those weird sexual fuckers who are non-binary or whatever the fuck they're talking about. So it's not even like a ban. It's not even censorship. It's worse than that. It's forced speech. You will have the use of force used against you. You'll be put in jail if you don't use these words for those people. Right? That's being acted upon. But, that's not really happening. You can see it in Canada. You can see hate speech laws creeping up. I think we'll get rid of them in time, but the big thing that's happening is people aren't being allowed to act together. They're being banned from being acted together. And of course then there are some instances where people are being acted upon. right? And conservatism, people will oppose conservatism to liberalism, and it's just a strange dichotomy, because all conservatism is, you see, like, there isn't really an agreed upon list of principles or main principles or whatever, but you look at all their principles and they're just liberal ideas about how people act together, and that's people take personal responsibility, and that's how you act together with other people. You are free to act however you want, just don't take away my freedoms to act however I want. And if somebody acts against you, don't expect somebody else to come and save you. Stand up for yourself. If you have to charge somebody, you charge them. Then you go to court and you do justice. Or you fail to do justice because you were actually wrong. Personal responsibility is just how people interact with each other. Free people interact with each other by taking personal responsibility. Then there's civil society, which is just people acting together for shared goals. They're not forced to be in these societies. They can exclude people if they don't want them there. That's fine, right? Everybody is using their freedom, and they're not taking away anyone else's freedoms. It's just a bunch of people using their freedom without taking away anyone else's freedoms. And they solve things, like, you might get a group who, like, they look after the neighborhood. This little neighborhood group, right? You get those sorts of things. Then the next thing is, how do free people interact together in the form of government? It's limited government. As soon as government starts getting big, that's not free people acting together. That's a group of people forcing things on another group of people, and they go, oh, well, we'll use taxation to redistribute wealth, and we'll tax people who earn more at a higher rate. And then we'll use that money to give it to people who aren't even working at all because it thinks it's a wonderkin or whatever the fuck it is. And depressed, and so it doesn't work, and blames society, and now you got to give them welfare. That's not liberal. And then free enterprise. That's how people go about acting together to make a profit. And to make a profit means to provide as much products, goods and services as you can, as the market wants, right? So when people contrast or oppose conservatism and liberalism, it doesn't make any sense, because surely you just look at conservatism and it's just it's gone beyond comparing one individual with another individual, and it's comparing how different groups of people act. It's a different form of analysis. It's a higher level form of analysis. It's like a liberal or a self-proclaimed liberal will say, well, if straight people can get married, then gay people can't get married because they suffer use of force and are therefore oppressed. No one suffers use of force. A church is an organic part of society. It's not like the government forces people to go to church and then the church goes around abusing people and excluding people. What's wrong with excluding people who don't serve your ends? There's nothing illiberal about that. But, that's how self-proclaimed liberals, they compare individuals, whereas really they should say, is the church acting as a civil society? And if not, make it act more like a civil society. And then the gay community saying they're left out, and you say, well, why don't you guys form a civil society yourselves and see what you can organically produce out of it? And maybe you can't do anything. Maybe you're not going to have some form of civil union or something that gets recognized or whatever. But you're free to act. But no, you see, people got to contrast these things, and I don't see how that works. So yeah, you can get a whole group of people who agree with each other and they want to act in a certain way, and then they use the government as a proxy for force. So instead of going out and assaulting a whole bunch of people, you just make it illegal not to pay taxes, and then you fuck with the tax code and the tax system, so that you've got a progressive tax and you're redistributing wealth, and right? That's a government that's where a significant part of the population is acted upon, and that's kind of where we are nowadays. Democracy is two wolves and a lamb voting on what to have for lunch. Obviously, you're going to eat the lamb, aren't you? And then Western countries are formed so that it's, so individuals act together. And it's not perfect. There isn't ideal, but how do you do that? And there's things like federalism. Then there's different forms of federalism. Like in the United States, they've got enumerated powers, and that's like the federal government can only do these things, and it can't outstep those bounds. Otherwise, you're breaking the Constitution. Then it goes over to the justice system. You've got separation of power. You've got the legislature is separate from the judiciary, is separate from the executive branch, and they all hold each other accountable. And then you've got the idea of representative government, which is the people who are paying the tax should decide how that tax is spent. And we obviously don't have much of that anymore, but in the past there was a lot more, government was a lot more representative. And it can be improved, and this is what conservatives want to do. And then there's just simple things like parliamentary procedure, or just like simple rules of order, and it's like you get a bunch of people together who are on the right, and it's like herding cats. Because one person justifies this position this way, and then somebody comes and has a different justification for it, and then suddenly it's like, oh, now we want to argue for the whole day. And it's like, guys, you got to do things. And you need rules of order. Somebody puts up a motion. It gets seconded. Amendments are made. It gets voted on. And to change the Constitution, you might need a supermajority. And to decide on how to act, you just need a majority, and then you need to have a quorum so that you don't have like 3 people rocking up to a meeting and making decisions for 300 people. But I mean, you form these little groups, and then like in Australia, we've got local government that does certain things. You've got your state government that does certain things, and you've got the federal government. And then there's, competition between these levels to try and, the state wants to look after itself. And then they're saying, like WA is saying, why are we getting 32 cents on the dollar back from all our GST contributions? And they're having a go at the federal government. And they're saying, that's unjust, and we're going to look after our citizens, and we want justice. So, you do get countries that are like this. It's just some part of the population acts on another part of the population to their benefit. They use the government as a proxy for force. And then you get countries that are more like this, and they're not perfect, but they have a fucking good go at acting together, or making people responsible for acting together, and preventing people from, acting upon their fellow citizens. And when they do, holding them to justice and giving them the consequences they deserve. So like that's just sort of how I think politically. And I try to make it a functional thing. I'm not there trying to moralize, like somebody can think I'm an evil idiot all they want. I'm not too concerned about having everyone like me. I sort of got enough people in life to fucking keep me busy, and you don't need to impress people with your morals. I mean, some people obviously are doing that, but my aim is for it to be functional and to understand and know what's going on and how to go about things. But nothing I've said there is not functional. I mean, if you need to get a bunch of people to rally together to use the government as force, that's going to be hard. Whereas if you just, stop or punish criminals, and that's like, 1% of the population in their lifetime are criminals? I don't know. But that's going to take a lot less resources and energy and whatever to get done. It's just more realistic. And realism wins the day. So, I can see I've got one foot in the skeptic camp. And I got to say to people who approach their thinking in this way, you got to say, like, well, are governments in the West not acting upon significant portions of their populations? Of course they are. Why do you think Brexit happened? What was the same-sex marriage thing in Australia about? What was Trump about? Right? More so than people are allowed to act together. Are we going to stop the churches from not allowing gay marriage? And then we're going to force them... Now we're going to force churches to do what they don't... so we're going to take away freedom of conscience and freedom of association and things like that. So now you're attacking one group's rights, individual rights, with another group and inflating their rights. I mean, in Brexit, you don't want people to choose their own immigration policy. Well, yeah, see how that works out for you. So, what if skeptics fail to deliver more proactive conservatism? Well, the left wins, doesn't it? If you're just going to do a sort of reactive conservatism where, there's a same-sex marriage plebiscite, what are we going to do to stop it? It's all reactive. There's plenty to be proactive about. Could make, strengthen federalism, make our taxes more representative. Encourage civil societies and local government, and there's a whole lot of things to be proactive about, and a lot of the time skeptics don't seem to be proactive, they just seem to be reactive, because they're too focused on liberalism or maybe libertarianism, and they haven't stopped to think about how do groups of free people act in a free and just way compared to groups that don't. Conservatism is about groups and saying, well, this group is acting illiberally and this group is acting liberally, and we're going to protect that group. And these people are trying to have a say about their taxes, and we're going to give them the opportunity. That's all it is. And so skeptics need to step up to the plate. They need to go beyond individualism. They need to look at individuals acting together. Because I know when I get together with right-wing mates and we're talking about things or we're deciding to do things, it's like herding cats. And so you agree basically to the rules of order, which is like, if these blokes who I'm happy to associate with want to do something that I don't want to do, then I'll go with the vote. That's perfectly liberal. But there's groups out there that are not acting liberal, and the skeptics just want to react and say, be an individual. No, you gotta look after individuals acting together. And the alt-right, you can see I've got a foot in this camp as well. I think it'll take a lot more graft to use this approach than what you might call a more skeptical approach. But, the alt-right say politics is war by other means. Dead right. Like, your country can get into a situation where politics is no longer the solution and war becomes the solution. It's happened in history. It's happened hundreds of times before, and it can happen again, and they're very right about this. Politics is war by other means. You want to solve it now, you don't want to solve it later when the guns are out. And the alt-right says race is real. Now, I don't believe that the fact that certain populations have like sub-Saharan Africans have an average IQ of 70 and you need an IQ of 90 to understand free markets. And that, that's, when you hear that stat, you don't go, fuck me, that's surprising. You go, oh, well, that explains a lot of things. They're not big on free markets in Africa, I'll tell you that much. You tell them that and they'll just fucking respond like they got different ideas, and that's because they do. Alright, so the alt-right says race is real. And I suppose what they're saying is they're saying immigration policies that restrict people are other people, non-citizens, recognizing the barrier between citizens and non-citizens is legitimate. And they're right. It is legitimate. Why should you import a whole bunch of third world populations and then suffer by their politics, and they're forcing the economy to fucking not work? You know, why the fuck would that be legitimate? So the alt-right says race is real. Skeptics want to deny that. Now I'm also kind of with the skeptics. So I say, well, so what if there's differences between the races and there are a few black people in America, right? So what does that mean? You're going to take their white rights away? No, it's more reason to force freedom on everybody. I think that's the better solution. So when you get groups acting illegitimately, you stop them. And you're going to get a better result just by stopping them, by forcing people to be free. And the alt-right wants an ethno-state. So, you know, how does that come about? Well, I suppose you're going to, in the first place, have some candidate with a immigration policy that says something like, we'll only have white people immigrate. Well, if it gets voted for, what gives you the right to be, you know, I'm out and I'm not going to support my party? I mean, you can do it. It's not going to change anything. It's like all those never-Trumpers. It doesn't stop Trump from being the president. You're just morally grandstanding, saying, I'm better than Trump and therefore I don't identify with him. Well, you can do that. Good luck. It's not going to work. And the alt-right is identitarian, and they're saying you've got these anti-white collectivists, which most of them are white people, but they just have a guilt complex because they've got a simplified understanding of history. History, you can't remember what you don't understand. Just remember that. That's Jordan Peterson again. And you've got white individualists who want to sort of form a coalition, I suppose, with these anti-white collectivists, even though they don't really see eye to eye. Like, the white individualists hate feminism. But when it comes to, say, some guy saying, well, we'll just ban, like an outright ban, anyone who's not white from immigrating. Right, so these guys in the middle are probably going to form a coalition with the anti-white collectivists, which is what making these white collectivists really fucking aggro against them. And that's what's, you know, I mean, I don't know what's going to happen. What if the alt-right fails? You know, what if the skeptics fail? What are we trying to do here? Trying to do a bit of both. You know? Because, yeah, I mean, you could just preach away, and I suppose this is what the alt-right's got to realise, is, I don't know, it's early days, but at some point it'll be clear whether your platform works. And then maybe it doesn't work. And if it doesn't work, maybe you've got to improve where the skeptics have shortfalls in such a way that you win the skeptics over. You've got to point out to the skeptics that individuals can act together without force. And of course it can happen that people are acting together because of force. And those are two very different things. And you've got to protect the people who are acting together without force from the people who would use force. So maybe at some point the alt-right will have to concede that, look, these majority white countries aren't going to vote along alt-right lines. Because the alt-right will want to solve this politically before it becomes war, right? Yeah. So at some point maybe you have to concede that your message isn't going to win majority support, which is what you're going to need. And then maybe you focus on improving, because these guys all know what's lacking in the skeptics. Lots of them have nailed it, just going, why are you acting like individual collective is a dichotomy? There's way more to it than that, way more nuance. They've noticed it, but maybe they've just got to educate skeptics to that. Maybe that's got to be the platform that the right uses. Conservatism, good old conservatism. It works. I mean, but yeah, the alt-right might fail and the skeptics might fail. The skeptics might just not protect groups, legitimate groups, enough to the point that illegitimate groups take over. And once the illegitimate groups have taken over the organic institutions that have arisen from a culture, oh well, you're not really going to take them back, and they're not going to let you form the free alternatives to replace them. So yeah, what's going to happen? Well, whoever gets the most votes in the primaries is the nominee. And you can be a never Trumper all you want. All you're going to do is make yourself look like a tit. Maybe it works that there's identitarian, policies first, and then you make everybody freer, or you make everybody free first, and then, who knows what's going to work. But yeah, I just thought I'll just have a chat about what's going on in the right wing. If you follow a bunch of people on YouTube or subscribe to their channels, you see these battles being fought every day, and it's like, before Trump, everybody was on the same side, and they were making videos, taking the piss out of feminists and blah blah blah, and it was all those easy targets, and now they've got to make content, but Trump's the president, and so that sort of battle's over. But this is the new battle lines is. And whatever happens. Like, fuck, this is beyond individuals. There's no one person who can decide what the approach in the future is going to be on the right. And, fuck. Yeah, whatever happens. Yeah, I personally think conservatism will be like the meeting point of the alt-right and the skeptics, and it's a good resolution of both their shortfalls. Yeah, to into something that's a more perfect whole, more functional. That's the word. The skeptics are a bit like the libertarians, and with a Sargon of Akkad calling it what do you call it? Liberalists. That's just going to be like the libertarian movement. It just never gets any steam. It's just 3% of the vote. Why? Because it's not functional. Because that's not what people are like. I mean, their ideas are useful. They've got use, but in a much broader picture. So the skeptics, the liberalists are just going to be. They're not going to get a critical mass going. And I don't think the alt-right is going to get a critical mass going. Although it's definitely growing. And it's growing pretty fast, but I reckon conservatism is what will get the critical mass going. And I just think that's because it's a hell of a lot more functional. Right. So there you go. Skeptics versus the alt-right. Cheers, guys. Thanks for watching.